Hey, Lindsay, how's it going?
Hey there, Aubrey. How's everything today?
Excellent. I have kind of a funny question for you. I'm actually really curious about your answer to this.
Okay, go for it.
When's the last time you mowed a lawn?
Oh my gosh, mowed a lawn? Oh, I haven't mowed a lawn in forever. I don't even know when was the last time, to be
Can't even
honest.
say. I know, me neither. We actually ended up putting in turf because in Arizona they've asked us not to have grass, to not water. There's too much
No.
drought. We just really can't afford the water to be watering grass. So you either do turf, like fake grass, or landscape rock. And
Right,
so
right.
I don't know if I'll ever have to mow a lawn again.
Right, what is it that they call that? It's called, like, xeriscaping or something? That
We call it
expression?
desertscaping, but other places
Desertscaping.
they might call it xeriscaping, where there's just
Okay.
no yard, no lawn, no grass.
No water required to maintain. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've been reading a lot about some water issues going on in Arizona, actually, and some
Yes.
towns are getting cut off entirely from water supplies.
Right, it's an issue. Anywhere where it's a desert, landscape, anywhere in the desert is always going to have water issues, but some
Wow.
years are worse than others depending on
Right.
the
Yes.
drought, the water table. It can be tricky for sure.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to that topic on All Ears English because, we like to talk about cultural issues, climate change stuff happening,
Mhm.
10-year drought in Colorado. So interesting stuff. But for today, I just want to start by encouraging our listeners to hit follow. Guys, we talk about all kinds of interesting things, but the core piece here at All Ears English is to help you focus on connection, not perfection. So if you love that idea, hit follow on this show, right, Aubrey?
Yes, absolutely. 4 new episodes every week, and they're
You got
all
it.
amazing. Great ways to connect in English with friends, coworkers. It's a
Yes.
fantastic podcast. I highly recommend it.
And you're also over there on the IELTS Energy podcast twice a week with Jessica Beck. If our listeners are taking IELTS, they should definitely go over there and check that one out as well, don't you think?
Absolutely. Really, any exam you might be studying for to take a test in English, you're going to learn vocabulary, test taking strategies, but specifically IELTS, right? We're teaching everything the examiner's looking for. Jessica was an examiner for 14 years, so she has all that
Yes.
inside info. Make sure to follow IELTS Energy if you are studying for the IELTS exam.
I love it. So let's get into sharing how long it's been since we've done something. Where do we start today? This is going to be a
Yeah,
good
so
connection skill.
this question I asked you, right? When's the last time you did
Mhm.
something? I feel like I get asked questions like this a lot
Yeah.
where, we're interested in people's pasts. We want to know what you've done in the past. And like you said, it's a great connection skill. It's
Yeah.
awesome for sort of small talk at work, but it's not just about the weather. You care about someone's past. You're interested in something that happened to them. You need natural native phrases for having this conversation.
Yeah, this is kind of a cool way of connecting just below the surface, right? We're going beyond the weather conversation and daily life, but we're going into our actual lives, which is quite cool, I
Yes,
think.
and it's fun to share if someone's telling you about something about their past, it's really fun to share how long it's been since you did that or if
Yeah.
you never did it, right? To build that commonality between you is really a bond.
Absolutely. So this is coming from a question from Tomoko. Do we want to read part of the question? Do you want to summarize the question, Aubrey? How do we want to do it?
Yes. Lindsay, how
Mhm.
about if you read this first part of the
Okay.
question and then I'll summarize the rest?
Okay, so this is from our amazing listener, Tomoko. So she says, I'm Tomoko. I've been listening to and having fun with your podcast for so long. That is awesome, Aubrey. I love
Yes,
when we
I love it.
hear from our longtime listeners. It's fantastic. My English learning has been awesome since I happened to find your podcast, and I'm really grateful that I have access. I have a question. When I was listening to one of your episodes the other day, I wondered if I ever mention a specific year to talk about something that has happened since. For example, Lindsay said something like, I haven't had a car since 2004. Is it something related to cultural differences or personal preference? I've heard something similar to this a lot. If you could do an episode about it, that would be great.
Oh,
Okay.
such a great question. And she sort of continued to clarify
Mhm.
that in Japanese, she feels like she doesn't hear this often at all, someone mentioning a specific date or a specific number.
Okay.
And so she's really curious, like, how much of this is personal preference? How much of it is cultural?
Interesting.
And I know I'm so excited to get into this. I had to think about it a little bit. Like, why do I say one or the other? What do I hear? I've been trying to pay attention as I listen to podcasts and TV. This happens often. I'll get a question from a listener, and then I'll start being really observant about that. I'm like,
Yeah.
huh, what do we say and why? It's interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. How much detail should we really give at certain levels, going back into
Yeah.
our history, into specific years or times? Okay, let's dive
Yeah.
into it. Yeah.
So it definitely is is both cultural and personal preference. How
Mhm.
detailed you get about your life and your past, and it's also very dependent on the situation. How much time do you have? What is the relationship? And if
Yes.
it's necessary, like there are a few reasons that you would give a specific date, right?
Okay.
First of all, definitely to emphasize. If you're wanting to emphasize how long ago something happened or that particular date because something else was important
Mhm.
about that date, then you might say, this hasn't happened since 2020 or
Right.
since 2004, right? You may give the
Right.
date to emphasize.
Or if you happen to know the exact date, like you remember it, and you think that's important for the context, you might say that,
Yeah,
right?
I think this about where you were saying I haven't had a car since 2004, probably there was something important about that date where it just sort of stuck
Mhm.
in your mind that that's
Yeah.
the last year you had a car.
And I think also the more ridiculous something is, the more likely we are to share it. It's been a
That's true
long
too.
time since I've owned
Like,
a
it's crazy
car.
that it's been that long,
Yeah,
right?
18 years or something like that. So a long, long, long time. And therefore, it just makes for a more interesting podcast episode to share the date, right?
Right, that's the thing. When you're general, it's often less interesting. If you're
Yes.
just like, "Oh, it's been a long time." If you
Yeah.
know the date
Boring.
offhand, then that's an interesting detail for sure.
Yeah, details are interesting, right? Details add color to who we are and it gives people something to connect to. Tomoko was listening to that episode and that struck her as something interesting. And now we have another episode here. We have a dialogue
Yes.
going with her and our listeners. So
And it
add
is
details.
interesting to
Yeah.
think about that cultural piece because if it sounded a little bit off, a little bit different in Japanese, maybe no one would say the date in that sentence. It could be, Americans we tend to overshare sometimes. Maybe we share dates when it doesn't really matter and it doesn't feel off to us. Then I
Sure.
don't think an American would have heard that and been like, weird. Why did she say in
No.
2000? We do that, right?
No, yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. And then again, as you said, if the exact date is relevant, some reason that happened there and you remember it. So good.
Exactly, right? For
Mhm.
some reason, the date is important, then we will share the date if we know it top of mind, if we know it offhand, right?
Yes. Okay, what else, Aubrey?
So here's some just little examples. There's the car one that Tomoko shared. We might
Yeah.
say, I graduated from university in 2001. That's like the date is important. It's relevant. I'm going to share that exact date.
Yes.
And it's probably top of mind. Like we remember the date that we graduated from university.
Yes, or oh, this is a horrible scenario, by the way, but I haven't eaten chocolate since 1998. Oh my gosh. You could have discovered an allergy that year, right? Oh,
Right,
God
something like
forbid.
that, right? Where you remember a specific reason that it happened in 1998. Maybe
Yeah.
that's when you realized you're allergic to chocolate, you had some kind of reaction, then it would make sense to share the year.
Right. I love it. So good. Mhm.
Now, I think this is an important conversation skill to point out here that often we do not want to provide dates when it's unnecessary and when the date's not top of mind, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're having just a casual conversation and someone might say, like, oh, I haven't had a car since, oh man, how long's it been? I can't
Boring,
remember the
right?
exact date. And you start thinking, like, oh, it doesn't matter. I
Oh.
don't care what year. Like, there are better ways to say that when it doesn't really matter. It's not top of mind rather
Mhm.
than letting the conversation kind of drag while
Oh
you
my
think of
gosh.
this date that doesn't really matter.
I think the key point here that you're making is so important, Aubrey. It's don't lose momentum in your
Right.
connection, right? Because yeah, if it doesn't come right to you right away, I knew 2004, it was an important date. It was my last year in college. Then I sold my car and I moved to Japan, right? That's key for me. But
Yep.
if I would have had, oh, was it 2005, six? I don't, no, that's a total waste of time. And you have lost the attention of the other person, right?
Yes, and
That's what
this
you're
is
saying.
as we're talking when we're talking about conversation skills that can sort of lose the momentum, this is a big one. It's that TMI, that too much information that's
Yes.
totally irrelevant. We probably all know someone who just gives unnecessary details, and it's
Overshare.
especially a problem if they're taking the time to try and think of, did this happen Wednesday or Thursday? It doesn't matter, right? Move on. Don't lose that momentum.
Yeah, and this is it kind of ties into the curse of knowledge that I've read about, when we know a lot about something, some topic, maybe some technology topic, we have a tendency to want to give all the context. I think engineers are
Right.
guilty of this.
Yeah.
Uh, and I do this sometimes too when we talk about our marketing systems and things like that. I give too much detail, right? And we don't really care. We don't need that right away. Wait until we really need that. Wait until our team
Right.
needs what they need and then we give the detail, right? We
Yes, it's
that's
a
quite an art.
skill to
Yeah.
eliminate the detail that's not necessarily or
Mm.
necessary or save it for later when it is vital, when it
Yeah.
will matter, right? So here are
Yeah.
some great alternatives. If you're having that conversation and you find yourself you're about to share a date but you can't think of it, you
Mhm.
can share something big that happened around that time, right? I haven't had a car since just after high school. I
Right.
haven't had a car since I moved from New York, right? Just
Right.
something else big around the same time and then keep that momentum going, move the
Mhm.
conversation along.
And to be honest, actually, Aubrey, I like those answers better because they give a lot more conversation material.
Mm.
"Oh, you moved to New York? Interesting. How was life in New York?" Right?
Good
Now
point. You're sharing something else interesting that you can build on.
exactly, as opposed to a year, which is just totally arbitrary. I don't care,
Right.
2004, 5, 6. So, good stuff.
All
Okay,
right. So
so
we're now
what's
going
next
to
up?
get into some native vocabulary to emphasize how long ago something happened.
Okay, so first, we're getting into years, is that right?
Yeah, so we'll say in years. For example, I haven't had a car in years. And
Mhm.
this is really fun for emphasizing. We're pretty accurate here, right? We're not going to say this if it's been decades or it was not since you were a child. This
Yeah.
I think we use it for like 5 to 10 years, something that hasn't happened for about that amount of time, right?
Right, right. So I haven't had a car in years, and we're really emphasizing, as you said, we're using our intonation here, right? Um,
Exactly. It would be strange to say this in a monotone.
I haven't had a car in years. Boring, right? I
Right?
haven't been to the movies in years. Oh, that would I would never say that. I love going to the movies. Do you like going to the movies, Aubrey, to
Yes.
the theater
I
and
do. I just saw Avatar not long ago. I love
So I
just sitting in a
too, I
movie
saw it
theater in the dark.
too.
What did you
Yeah.
think? Did
I
you
liked
love
it a
it?
lot. I wasn't
Oh,
a big
so
Avatar person, but I actually did I felt it was a little long.
it is
Um
long. Oh, it's over 3
A
hours, I
little
think. It's
self-indulgent.
long.
Yeah, yeah, a little long, but I think James Cameron movies tend to be long. I mean, he did Titanic,
They
right?
are always long,
Super
right? The first
long.
Avatar was long, but they are
Yeah,
entertaining.
really good. It was great. I actually really enjoyed it. So, yeah,
But
good
I do
stuff.
know people who just don't go to the movies often. So I feel like this is something I heard a friend say recently, like, "Oh, I haven't been to the movies in
Ye
years." And this is just so native and natural, right? You wouldn't necessarily say the date. You wouldn't be like, "I haven't been to the movies since 2008." That's not gonna be top of mind. This would
Right.
be much more natural.
In years. It's just more broad and it's more emphatic, it's more interesting, so go with that. So good. Okay, so that's the first thing we can say that will add some color to what we're saying and keep it broad, keep it general. Number 2, what would be the second thing we could say?
So this one is in ages, and there's
Yeah.
more exaggeration here. There's some hyperbole, right? It
Yeah.
could mean weeks or years, but you're exaggerating, right? So, for
Right.
example, I haven't exercised in ages. Maybe it's been
Ages.
4 days, but I usually exercise every day, so I'm
It's
exaggerating here.
so for you, it is ages, right? If
Yes,
you normally
that would be
exercise
ages for me.
it's all pretty relative here, guys, when we use ages, right? Um,
Exactly.
or you could say, common exchange, "How have you been? I haven't seen you in ages."
Yes,
Right?
and maybe it has been 10, 15 years. It also could have been a few weeks of someone that you see very often, right?
Sure,
If there's
sure.
a neighbor that I usually see multiple times a day and I don't see her for a few weeks, I might
Yes.
say, "I haven't seen you in ages."
Yeah,
Which
that's
is
right.
really funny exaggeration because ages would really mean like the Jurassic period, the Cretaceous period. We're talking about like ages of time. So what an exaggeration.
Right, it's all about your connection with that person. How often do you actually see that person? What kinda schedule
Exactly.
are you on with them? That's how we know what ages actually means and when to use that, right? Okay.
All right. And then the third one, in forever. Same
Mhm.
thing, definitely exaggerating, but really fun, really playful. I say this probably the most of these three. I think
Yeah,
that's what you said when I asked about the lawn, right? I haven't
that's
mowed a
what I
lawn in forever.
That's why I love that's how I opened it. Yeah, that's how I answered your question, and this one feels the most native, the most natural, the most
Hmm.
modern that you could possibly get, guys. This is what we say. At least you and
Yes.
I, Aubrey, we do all the time,
Yeah,
right?
and I
Yeah,
hear it a lot too, right? Yes, this
yeah.
is so native and natural. You might say, "Oh, I haven't seen this movie in forever."
In
That's it
forever.
probably means a few years, but forever, what an exaggeration.
It's weird because grammatically it doesn't really make any
It actually
sense.
is true.
It's clumsy, it's weird, but it's an expression, so go with it, guys. It's a connection expression, right? Or we haven't been there in forever, right? Like going to Disney. Do you go to Disney for a vacation destination with your family? Are you guys a Disney family or were you?
We're really not. We live
Not really.
close enough to Disneyland that we could, right? It's about a
Oh,
6-hour
yeah.
drive, but
Right.
it's so expensive. I
Yeah.
feel like the hotels and the park passes
Oh,
and
so
then all
expensive.
everything, the food when you get there. So for us, it's more because it's cost prohibitive. And
Mm,
then also we've had little kids and it is not fun to take very small children to Disneyland, in my opinion.
I
So
can
I was like, once you're
imagine.
6, I'll take you because there's so many rides they can't go on. They don't want to wait in line. And that's
Yes.
the other reason that I'm not really a Disney person. The lines are always so long. You're waiting for in lines for so long.
Oh,
Lots of
no,
reasons to
Disney.
not go to Disneyland,
Yeah,
actually.
people have strong feelings about Disney. I'm not a big Disney person, but a
No.
lot of people are for sure. So,
And it
just
is
wanted to
super
check on
fun, my
that.
kids love it, but it's just a very we'll go maybe once or twice,
Yeah. Yeah.
during our kids' lifetime. It's not something we're gonna do annually.
No, 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 no. Should we get into a role play for our listeners?
Yeah, let's do it. We'll use each of these in a role play. In this one, Lindsay, you and I just ran into each other at a coffee shop.
All right. I'm always at coffee shops, so that makes
Nice.
sense. Here we go.
So,
Uh,
how are you? I haven't seen you in forever.
Oh my gosh, it's been ages. I'm great. How are you?
As well as can be expected, my sister's in the hospital, so that's been tough.
Oh, sorry to hear it. I haven't seen her in ages. I saw on Facebook that she's fighting cancer, but I thought she was in remission.
She had a relapse, unfortunately. It hadn't been a problem in years and then suddenly showed up on scans again. Ugh, it's the
Oh,
worst.
yeah. Common
We
conversation, you
I know
know?
it's true, right?
Yeah.
I feel
Mhm.
like I have conversations like this a lot with friends that I don't see as often because
Oh,
maybe you sort of follow each other on social media a little bit, so you
right,
know the highlights, like the big things in someone's life,
right.
but if you haven't had a chance to talk to them, like, you're gonna chat about it when you run into each other.
Yeah, these things are gonna come up. This is life, right?
Mhm.
So where did we use our vocab here? Let's see. You said, "How are you? I haven't seen you in forever." And again, guys, you need to emphasize that, right, Aubrey? How would you say that again?
Yeah,
In
right, the intonation's important. I haven't seen you in forever.
ever.
That last word, whether it's in ages, in
Yeah,
years, in for that last word we really emphasize.
you really do. And then again, I did it. I said, "It's been ages. I'm great. How are you?" Right?
Yes, and
Perfect.
then in ages again, "Oh, I haven't seen her in ages."
Mhm. Love it. So
And then the
straightforward
last
and
one
years.
yes, right? It hadn't been a problem in years, and this it really is a little more specific when we use "in years," right? We wouldn't say it
Mm,
hadn't been a problem in ages or in forever because it's been a few years. So for this
yes.
one, in years, we're not gonna say it hasn't been a problem since 2006, no, we don't need that detail. We would just
Yeah.
say it hadn't been a problem in years.
Right. This is something a little more specific, more of a
Mhm.
timeline that we're talking about here, right? Maybe it's been a few
Exactly.
years. Yeah. Okay. So what's the takeaway for our listeners? I mean, these are some really creative ways to talk about when the last time was that something happened.
Exactly right. And you want these phrases because when someone is sharing about their past, it's such a great connection skill to
Yeah.
share how long it's been since you did that or that happened to you or something similar, right? To create that bond, that connection, something you have in common.
Yeah, guys, in your textbook, when you were learning English, you learned since, right? But now we're showing you new ways, new interesting things that you can say to brighten up that conversation and share pieces of yourself. And I think we'll have to come back to the cultural conversation, Aubrey, about how much, I think it comes back to how much of ourselves we reveal or
Mm.
of our past across cultures.
I
How is
would
that
love to
different?
hear about that, you guys. This episode is on YouTube. If you
Yeah.
want to come and leave us a comment there, I love to go and read those comments. Let us know what this is like in your culture, right? Would you share a
Yeah.
specific date? Do you do the same and exaggerate like we do in
Yeah.
American English, right? What is this like in your culture?
Right. Or is it about certain topics that you are more vague and then
Mm.
others you're more specific? Like maybe your academic background, you're more specific. Maybe your family background, you're more vague because there's a value of privacy. I'm curious about all this stuff, Aubrey. We're going to have to dig into this in another episode, another time. Guys, hit follow on All Ears English right now, wherever you're listening. You can subscribe on the YouTube channel or hit follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so you don't miss an episode of the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. Such a fun discussion today.
Good stuff, Aubrey. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.